What's going on YouTube? My name is Bez, and today we're going to be discussing the best fantasy basketball settings you could have for your league this year. But before I get into that, if you're interested in fantasy basketball, if you plan on playing fantasy basketball this season, or you just want to learn about fantasy basketball, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. I'm going to be posting a ton of fantasy basketball content on this channel. And if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you hit the sub button, the like button. We're going to get it going out here. Before I get into this, let me mention that this just goes for daily basketball. I know there are a couple platforms out there, like I know Fantrax does weekly basketball, and it really sucks that ESPN and Yahoo doesn't do that type of stuff because I think it could be beneficial. I know some people don't always want to set their lineup every day and they want to use weekly averages and make it feel more like football. You know, everybody has their preferences, but that's really not an option here. We're going to go with daily because, you know, it's kind of the most common, and it's just hard to find a good platform to play weekly averages on, if any. So we're going to be going with daily. And these are just the settings that I have found to work the best. Everybody's different. Again, your league might be different. Your league mates might not like some of these rules. These rules were all agreed upon by my whole league after some years of playing fantasy basketball. And I just found that these were the most fair and at the same time, kind of the most fun fantasy basketball rules. So let's just not waste any time. Let's hop straight into it. So almost forgot. Let me mention that this is for head-to-head scoring. I think head-to-head is probably the best way to play fantasy basketball. I know some people like rotisserie or categories, but if you're doing like a real fantasy basketball league for money, I definitely think head-to-head points is the way to go, especially if you're someone coming from fantasy football. You know, the other categories are just going to be weird. I don't know. I just thought that even though your players played well, you could still lose because like of certain things like rebounds or steals or assists or field goal percentage. It's like this really puts emphasis on individual players playing well, which is what I think fantasy basketball should be. The first one I want to talk about is points. I know people like to play with the setting and, you know, make it half 0.5 for every point, but let's not mess around too much. Let's keep it simple. 1 point is 1 point. Moving on, field goals made. So I have set field goals made to 1 and field goals missed to 0.5 or negative 0.5, you could say. And this is one of the ones that people definitely vary on. I think the default would be field goals made is 2 and field goals missed is -1. But I think that's a little too extreme. Making a field goal is obviously like a big part of the game, and you're going to get a point for scoring every point. But making field goals should be important. If you have a guy that made 24 shots, you know, you should be rewarded for that. Now, you're already getting rewarded for the points, for the three-pointers, the free throws, yada, yada, yada. So I didn't want to make it too much. You know, 2 points, you made 24 field goals. You already have 48 points strictly off the field goals, right? Not even counting anything that's missed or turnovers, which, you know, sometimes they don't even have any. So we're just going to stick with 1. And for miss, we're going to go with 0.5. It's a good way to balance efficiency, I think, while being rewarding to players that make a lot of shots, because making a lot of shots is hard. You know, being efficient is hard, and we definitely want to penalize players that are not efficient, but at the same time, we want to reward players that are efficient while not making it overpowered. And that's kind of the main focus you'll see with these settings, is that nothing's really overpowered. I feel like the way we've set it up, it's super balanced, and it makes the most fun experience for fantasy basketball. So these are just what I have found that work the best. You can tweak these, you know, slightly. I think changing these, you know, by 1 point, 0.5 points, 0.25 points, you'll find your sweet spot there. But I think this generally is a good baseline to start on for fantasy basketball rules. Free throws are a little less forgiving because you should be making your free throws. You know, free throws are one of those things that if you're a bad free throw shooter, you're going to get penalized for it, criticized for it. So we definitely want to put an emphasis on that. We really try to kind of replicate, you know, what would be a fair evaluation of some of the skills in the NBA. Especially with the way the scoring works, because if you score points and make field goals, it's just going to pile on, and you don't want to make it too overpowered. You know, this is why threes, as you'll see in this next one, are only 0.75, because you hit a three-pointer, number one, you're making a field goal, you're getting 3 points, and then you're getting the bonuses for threes. I played in a league where made threes were 3 points, and it's just absurd. Like, you'll see a guy who makes 11 threes score like 150 points, and it's like, he won't have any other stats. He'll play terrible defense the game. He might have 2 assists, 2 rebounds, but he scored 40 points. So he's literally the highest scorer of the week. And to a degree, you might agree with that. He scored 40 points. So it's like, wow, he should be getting a lot of points. But, the NBA is more than just scoring. We've seen a lot of players put up a ton of points and lose the game or just be ineffective players, a la Andre Drummond. Put up big stats and rebounds, but does he help winning? Not really. You definitely want to feel like your player's making an impact without empty stats. So that's why we made 3-pointers 0.75. Offensive rebounds 0.5 and rebounds are 1. Now hear me out. You're like looking at this like, why is an offensive rebound 0.5? This is intentional because when you get an offensive rebound, it counts for a rebound as well. So every offensive rebound is essentially 1.5 as opposed to a regular rebound, which is 1. I know people like to overvalue offensive boards, but second chance points in the league are only valuable if you score. So, you get a rebound and you put the bucket up, you'll get rewarded for that with the point system, but getting an offensive rebound, you shouldn't be over rewarded for it more than an assist, let's say, right? And that brings us to assists, which is also 1.5, and that's exactly why I wanted to make offensive rebounding 1.5. To me, it's hard to compare certain aspects of the game like rebounding and playmaking, but an offensive rebound seems like it should have the same amount of value as a good assist. So that's why I tried to make them equal. And again, the same time, you're still getting points for normal rebounds, 1 point, and assists typically are worth more than rebounds. So you could maybe make offensive rebounds 0.75, tweak that, and things like that. And again, these are just my personal rules. Steals are 2.5, and you'll look at this like, why are steals 2.5 and blocks are 3? Well, it's a lot easier to get steals than blocks. Let's just be honest. You can cheat passing lanes, or just a guy will lose his handle and you'll just get an easy steal. So not that steals aren't valuable. You could still rip a player up, which is very, very valuable in the big time play. But blocks are kind of, you have to time it right. You have to chase somebody down. It's like people, players are smart enough not to get blocked most of the time in the NBA, but you can make bad passes and get passes stolen all the time. So while steals are important, we wanted to just make blocks a little more valuable, which is why it's 2.5 to 3. Turnovers are your standard -1.5. Don't have to explain that. That's how it is. Double doubles and triple doubles are 4 and 6. And as you'll see, quadruple doubles are also 100 points. Now, reasoning quadruple doubles, I don't think I have to explain. It's just a fun little gimmick here. If anybody in the league gets a quadruple double, I don't even know when the last time that happened was. I think it was Hakeem Olajuwon in like 97 or something. I don't know. That's just what on the top of my head, that's just what I'm thinking of. I could be completely wrong, but I think Hakeem Olajuwon or maybe David Robinson had like the last quadruple double in the league in the 90s. So it literally doesn't happen at all. And if it were to happen, I think it should be some sort of, fun little point addition that you get. I know it's kind of like a guaranteed win, but it's just so rare. Your player's just going to have an absurd amount. I just think it's a fun thing to add. This is definitely something you don't have to add if you don't want to. I just think it's funny that they have the option to add points for quadruple doubles, and we want to make it a very notable milestone if it's achieved. And with double doubles and triple doubles, I think this is a good range to have them at, because double doubles are going to be more than any one stat, but they're not too overpowered. When people make triple doubles like 10 points, guys like Jokic can get them on a nightly basis. So it's like, over the course of a week, he might get you 30 points just by getting triple doubles. And it's like, at the same time, you don't want to penalize players if they have, 40, 10, and 9 or something like that. They're one assist short of a triple double. You don't want to make the drop off so steep and like it's a difference between getting 0 points and 10 points. 6 points feels like a good reward, but at the same time, you missed out on 6 points. It's like a 3 and a rebound or something. It's not too much that you're missing out on. Same thing with double doubles, but yet at the same time, you are still getting rewarded for getting that double double. All right, there are some other settings that I do want to discuss, and these are actually kind of vital to the functionality and success of this league. And you guys need to hear me out, because especially with how the daily works and how people can stream and how, sometimes more games played is like very important. I think we've developed a system to kind of negate that and kind of minimize the amount of people who are just constantly streaming players just in order to get more games played. And there's always an option to do weekly game limits so that each team has 40 games and another team has 40 games. But the problem with that is once your team hits 40 games, it'll just stop counting games. Like, it won't take your highest 40 scoring games from your players. It's just going to take the first 40. So, if Jokic put up 5 points on Monday, but put up 78 points on Friday, but that game was over the amount of set games that you could play, it will not count the 70-point game, but it is going to count the 4-point game. And I personally don't like that. I think it's such a buzzkill and it's kind of whack. So we decided, instead of doing game limits, we did matchup acquisition limits. So basically what the reasoning here is, instead of limiting the amount of games your players could play, we're simply limiting the amount of people you could stream. So we've set the matchup acquisition limit to 3 players. So essentially you can only pick up 3 players throughout the week. And what basically that's going to do is people are going to have to be smart with their transactions. They can't just every single day pick up a new player or have like 2 streaming spots and pick up 2 or 3 players. You're going to have to save those claims and those ads just in case somebody gets hurt. Maybe you can use 1 on a streamer, but the other 2 you maybe have to save them. Maybe you want to pick up a player later in the week that goes off, or maybe another person wasted their three waiver claims on a streaming option, and now this other person can pick up a player who's benefiting from an injury or benefiting from a good stretch of games, while you can't do that because you used all your waiver claims. So it's definitely going to promote smart ads and being smarter. But at the same time, another great thing about this is that you're going to be able to basically just play your roster versus the other team's roster. You're just going to be subbing out the bench players in and out, but essentially that's all it's going to be. You're not going to be having new players in and out the lineup every single day. It's essentially the whole weekly matchup is probably going to be mostly you versus someone else's entire roster and just whatever games they play. Because with the only 3 waiver acquisition or matchup acquisition limits, they're not going to be having more than 3 new guys maximum. That's a maximum throughout the week. Honestly, this is the best way to go about it if you're doing daily and not doing game limits, because I think game limits are a little too much of a buzzkill. This way you still get all the points that you have. You're not playing against somebody who's playing 67 games while you're playing 40, barring injury, of course. Your whole team is not injured. And I personally think this is just the best way to run a fantasy basketball league, because it promotes a good depth and good drafting, while at the same time you can't just pick up whoever and play whoever just to get points. Now, I don't know if I changed this, but I'm just gonna go over it real quick. For the playoffs, for a 12-team league or 10-team league, you want to have 6 playoff teams. You want to have 1 week per playoff matchup. I think that might have been defaulted to 2, but we do not want that. You don't want to play 2 weeks in the playoffs. You don't want to make anything different than it is in the regular season. It's just, it doesn't really make sense. Why would you do that? And then playoff seeding tiebreaker, I think this is head-to-head record as default, but it should be as total points for, because like sometimes you'll have a bad week and lose to someone and you don't want to miss the playoffs, even though you had 3,000 more points than them, but just because of that 1 week, you missed the playoffs. So total points for is definitely the one you want for that. Real quick, I wanted to go over some of the roster changes. Not much, standard roster settings. The only thing I have is 4 bench spots and 1 IR spot. And last season, the IR spot was super iffy. With all the COVID, all the injuries, having 1 IR spot was just not enough. So, this one is definitely a wait and see approach for the IR spot. If it's just as many injuries as last season, knock on wood, hopefully not. But if it is, maybe adding a second IR spot would be smart. Although I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to be nearly as much as last season. So I don't think that's something you have to worry about. And yeah, that about wraps it up. We covered every setting that I think we need to cover. And it just kind of sums up what I think the best fantasy basketball scoring settings are head to head. These scoring settings, you know, waiver acquisition limits for daily games. I think that's just the best way to go about it. Again, fantasy basketball is one of the sports that has like one of the most fluid scoring settings. I've talked to many people. I've been on forums that everybody has way different scoring settings. Everybody customizes it to their own liking. So this is just my personal belief of, you know, what I've tweaked over the years to see what works and what not, what I've heard from other people, what I've read from online, you know, things of that nature, just kind of compiling everything together. This is what I came up with. And again, some of these values by 0.5, by 1, adjusting them maybe for your own personal liking, whatever way you want to play, feel free to do so. But if you want a good baseline and something that I think will be a lot of fun, I think these are the best settings to go with. If you want to try them out on this and adjust as the season goes on, I don't know how you guys do it. You know, everybody does their fantasy basketball leagues their own way. So, you know, go about that as you wish. But personally, this is what we're going to be playing with this season. And this is what I believe are going to be the best and most fun settings for basketball. Again, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the sub button, that like button, that bell button. I'm gonna be posting a lot. I might even post 2 videos this week. Crazy. I don't normally post 2 videos, but fantasy basketball got me hyped. So yeah, make sure to stick around. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.